When my brother looked me dead in the eye at his black tie wedding reception and pointed toward the back corner, I thought he was joking. "Stand near the wall," he whispered coldly so I wouldn't ruin his bride's high society family photos. My reserved seat at the head table? Handed over to his fiancé's cousin's random +1. The room fell quiet as my sister-in-law smirked, assuming I'd swallow my pride to avoid making a scene. Instead of crying, I took a slow breath, walked right up to the gift table, grabbed my heavy envelope, and smiled. "Don't worry," I said, "I'll stay out of the frame forever." He came running after me as I walked out, completely unaware that the envelope I took back didn't just hold cash. It contained the signed deed to his wedding venue. My name is Claire, and at 32 years old, I finally learned that blood doesn't make you family, it just makes you related. I spent my entire life as the quiet, dependable daughter, the one who worked long hours in real estate management while my younger brother, Brandon, was treated like royalty. When Brandon got engaged, I wanted to support him with everything I had. I even used my corporate connections to quietly secure the venue deposit for his dream wedding at a grand historic estate. I thought that maybe, just maybe, my family would finally show me an ounce of respect. Instead, the moment I walked into the reception hall, dressed in my tailored evening gown, the atmosphere shifted. The custom seat card with my name on it had been unceremoniously removed from the head table. Sitting in my place was my sister-in-law's distant cousin's random +1, laughing and sipping the top-shelf champagne. Confused, I walked up to Brandon and his new bride, assuming there had been a minor mix-up with the seating chart. But before I could even ask, Brandon leaned in close, his face twisting into a cold, condescending sneer. "Look, Claire," he whispered loudly enough for the surrounding guests to hear, "this table is reserved for high society family photos. Your outfit looks a little off the rack, and frankly, you don't fit the aesthetic. Just go stand near the wall in the back, so you stay out of the frame." His bride let out a sharp, mocking laugh, completely confident that I would swallow my pride to avoid making a scene. Blood rushed to my ears, but I didn't scream or break down into tears. Instead, a freezing wave of clarity washed over me. I calmly turned on my heel, walked straight up to the mahogany gift table, and picked up the thick manila envelope I had left there minutes earlier. I looked Brandon dead in the eye, flashed a calm, knowing smile, and said, "Don't worry, I'll stay out of the frame forever." He came running after me as I walked out the front doors, but he had no idea what he had just lost. The envelope I took back wasn't just cash. It held the signed commercial deed release to his entire venue. Now, I'm curious about you listening to my story. If you were standing in my shoes, would you have walked out immediately or confronted him right on the dance floor? Comment your thoughts below and mention the city you're watching from. To truly understand how my own flesh and blood could tell me to stand near the wall at his own wedding, you have to understand the toxic hierarchy that governed our household for decades. My parents operated under an unspoken rule. Brandon was the golden prince who could do no wrong, and I was the invisible workhorse whose sole purpose was to facilitate his success. If Brandon failed a class, my parents blamed the educational system. When he wrecked his first car, they bought him a brand new luxury sedan the next morning while lecturing me on the importance of family unity. I poured my 20s into building my career, eventually becoming a senior manager for a commercial property trust that owned high-end historic venues across the state. Meanwhile, Brandon bounced from one failed startup to another, funding his lavish lifestyle on maxed-out credit cards and our parents' dwindling retirement savings. When he proposed to his image-obsessed fiancée, Chloe, they immediately set their sights on the Grandview estate, the most exclusive, breathtaking wedding venue in the city. There was only one massive problem. The venue required a $20,000 non-refundable deposit and an astronomical rental fee that Brandon's broken credit score couldn't come close to securing. He came to me, squeezing my hands with crocodile tears, promising that if I helped him secure the location, he would make sure I was treated like royalty on his big day. Because I loved my brother and desperately hoped this milestone might finally bridge the distance between us, I stepped in. I didn't just lend him money. I used my executive standing at the property trust to personally sponsor the event. I signed a commercial lease waiver and arranged for a private corporate subsidy that effectively wiped out his entire venue fee, reducing a $45,000 bill down to zero. The thick manila envelope sitting on the gift table was the final piece of the puzzle. It contained the fully executed, original legal release form stamped by my firm's compliance department. Without that physical document surrendered to the estate manager before the main reception concluded, the venue's automated system would treat the event as an unauthorized commercial breach, automatically triggering full market rate billing and freezing all event services. Throughout the entire planning process, Chloe and her mother systematically erased my presence. They uninvited my close friends, left me out of the bridal party group chats, and treated my financial contributions like a mandatory family tax. They assumed I was just a naive, soft-hearted older sister who would swallow any amount of disrespect just to keep the peace. They genuinely believed my quiet nature was weakness. They had no idea that by stripping my seat from the head table and ordering me to hide against the wall, they had just handed me the absolute right to pull the plug on their entire fairy tale. The cold night air hit my face as the heavy oak doors of the Grandview estate slammed shut behind me. My hands were shaking against the steering wheel, but beneath the sting of betrayal, a crystal-clear sense of authority took over. I set the thick manila envelope on the passenger seat, pulled out my smartphone, and logged into my property trust's executive administrative portal. With 3 precise taps on the screen, I officially revoked the pending corporate subsidy and flagged the event for non-compliance. Because the original signed release form was sitting right next to me instead of in the venue manager's hands, the system instantly reverted Brandon's booking to a standard, non-sponsored commercial contract, demanding immediate payment in full. I started the engine, but before I could even pull out of the parking space, a frantic pounding rattled my driver's side window. I looked over to see Brandon, his bow tie undone, his face flushed red with a mix of anger and sudden panic. I rolled the window down just 2 inches. "Claire, what on earth are you doing?" Brandon barked, trying to grab the door handle. "You can't just grab your envelope and throw a tantrum in front of everyone. Mom is crying, Chloe is furious, and you're making a complete scene over a simple seating arrangement. Get back inside right now, apologize to Chloe, and put that envelope back on the table." I looked at him with absolute, unyielding calm. "You told me to stand near the wall so I wouldn't ruin your photos, Brandon," I replied softly. "I'm just following your orders. I'm staying completely out of the frame." "Don't be so dramatic," he spat, slamming his palm against the door. "It's just a chair. You're ruining the happiest day of my life over your bruised ego." "It was never just a chair," I said, putting the car in drive. "Enjoy your wedding." I drove away, leaving him cursing in the rearview mirror. But the real storm was brewing inside the ballroom. Exactly 20 minutes later, the venue's automated compliance protocol executed. The venue manager, accompanied by 2 discreet security guards, stepped up to the head table where Brandon and his bride were holding court. In front of all 200 high society guests, the manager politely informed Brandon that because the mandatory owner's release form had not been submitted, the $45,000 venue fee was now past due. Per company policy, until a primary credit card was processed for the full amount, the open bar was immediately locked, the catering staff stopped serving the main courses, and the house lights were brought up to full brightness. The fairy tale atmosphere shattered into utter chaos. My secondary phone began buzzing relentlessly on the dashboard. Text after text flooded in from my mother and sister-in-law. My mother sent 6 screaming voice notes, calling me a heartless, bitter monster who was trying to send her golden boy to prison. Chloe texted that I had ruined her dream night and that her family would make sure I paid for every cent of the embarrassment. I didn't reply to a single message. I simply poured myself a warm cup of tea at home, set my phone on silent, and watched the chaos unfold from a peaceful distance. By 8 a.m. the following morning, the inevitable confrontation knocked violently on my front door. I opened it to find Brandon and Chloe standing on my porch, looking exhausted, disheveled, and completely drained of the arrogant posture they had carried the night before. Brandon's tuxedo shirt was wrinkled, and Chloe's eyes were bloodshot from a night of crying. Behind them stood my mother, her face contorted in a mix of frantic desperation and lingering rage. "Claire, you have to fix this right now," my mother shrieked before I could even say good morning. The estate manager charged Brandon's primary credit card a $10,000 penalty hold, and they're threatening to send the remaining $35,000 balance to collections by noon. They shut down the reception early. Chloe's father had to pay for the open bar out of his own pocket, and everyone is talking about how our family couldn't afford the venue. Chloe took a sharp step forward, her voice trembling with synthetic outrage. "You did this on purpose, Claire. You hid the fact that you owned or managed that property just so you could pull the rug out from under us on our wedding night. You're jealous that Brandon found happiness while you're sitting here alone." I stood in the doorway, perfectly composed in my morning robe, leaning against the frame. "I didn't hide anything," I said calmly, my voice deadpan. "Brandon came to me months ago begging for help because his credit was too ruined to rent a park pavilion, let alone the Grandview estate. I personally sponsored the venue, wiped out a $45,000 fee, and put the legal release in an envelope as my wedding gift." My mother blinked, her jaw dropping slightly as she looked at Brandon. "Is that true?" she gasped. Brandon flushed bright crimson, avoiding his mother's gaze. "That doesn't give her the right to ruin our reception over a seating chart," he yelled, trying to regain control. "So, what if we moved your seat? You're my sister. You were supposed to support me. Just sign the waiver right now, hand over the envelope, and tell the property trust it was an administrative mistake." "I owe you nothing, Brandon," I replied, stepping back to pull out my tablet. "And to make sure the rest of the family understands exactly what happened, I've already taken care of the narrative." While they were driving over, I had uploaded a single post to our extended family group chat. It included the itemized venue sponsorship invoice showing my $45,000 executive credit, the timestamped seating chart where my name had been unceremoniously crossed out, and a clear audio recording from the venue's entrance camera where Brandon explicitly told me to stand near the wall so I wouldn't ruin their photos. The group chat exploded in real time. Aunts, uncles, and cousins who had attended the wedding began leaving shocked comments, condemning Brandon and Chloe for treating the sole sponsor of their event like trash. My mother's phone began buzzing continuously with calls from embarrassed relatives demanding answers. Chloe stared at her phone in horror as her high society image crumbled into dust. "You ruined my reputation," she sobbed. "You ruined your own reputation the moment you treated generosity like weakness," I said firmly. "The venue balance is due by noon. I suggest you two start liquidating your luxury gear to pay for it." With that, I closed the door in their faces, leaving them stranded on the porch to face the reality of their own arrogance. Standing on my quiet porch after closing that door, a profound sense of peace washed over me for the very first time in my life. The heavy, suffocating expectation to constantly buy my family's love while swallowing their cruel disrespect was officially gone. I had spent 32 years believing that if I just gave a little more, worked a little harder, or stayed a little quieter, they would eventually see my worth. But watching them turn cold the second they thought they didn't need me anymore was the ultimate wake-up call. The fallout from that morning was swift and absolute. Unable to force me into signing the executive release, Brandon was forced to take out a massive, high-interest personal loan to cover the remaining $35,000 venue bill before it went to collections. To make the monthly payments, he and Chloe had to cancel their lavish European honeymoon, sell Brandon's beloved sports car at a loss, and move out of their luxury downtown apartment into a cramped two-bedroom rental on the outskirts of the city. The high-society lifestyle they were so desperate to parade in front of their guests completely vanished overnight, replaced by the crushing reality of the heavy debt they had accumulated. When Chloe's parents learned the truth about how Brandon had lied about sponsoring the venue, the tension between the two families reached a boiling point, turning their fairy tale marriage into a constant, bitter argument over money. My parents tried sending frantic, tearful voicemails for weeks, oscillating between angry accusations and desperate pleas for me to help Brandon clear his debts. But I held my ground. I officially updated my personal boundaries, blocked their numbers for the season, and severed all financial ties connecting my commercial accounts to their personal expenses. Without my safety net to rely on, My parents were finally forced to learn a lesson they should have faced decades ago. Enabling a golden child's arrogance always comes with a devastating price tag. Today, I am sitting in my bright, peaceful office overlooking the skyline, completely accountable to no one but myself. I used my energy to secure a major promotion at my property firm, surround myself with genuine friends who value my presence, and build a life grounded in real respect. Walking away from that wedding reception didn't destroy my relationship with my family. It freed me from a cage I had been trapped in for years. Standing near the wall was supposed to be my ultimate humiliation, but taking those steps out the door turned out to be the greatest victory of my life. Now, I'm deeply curious about all of you who have listened to my story until the very end. If your own family told you to step out of the frame at a major event, would you have handed over the venue release anyway? Or would you have pulled the plug just like I did? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to tell me which city or country you're watching from.